Zach Edey made history against the Brooklyn Nets. 25 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, 90% field goal percentage. Places him in elite company for rookies with this stat line. However, the Nets didn't lie down. Without Ben Simmons, Noah Clowney, and Day'Ron Sharpe, 3 of their 5 tallest players were ruled out. Yet, they actually turned a flaw into a strength in the second half against this man mountain. Now, this may not make much sense. Zach Edey's second half was remarkable compared to the first for offensive damage. 19 points without a miss, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks. However, get this. In the first half, Zach Edey's defensive rating sat at 95.2, handing him a 9.3 net rating in his 10 minutes of action. In the second half, Edey's offensive rating, as we've stated, was far and clear the best for Memphis, and cleared Dorian Finney-Smith, who didn't miss in a 17-point second half, which consisted of 5 threes. However, his defensive rating was far and clear the worst on the team at 128.5 in his 18 minutes of action. When you take a closer look, it makes a lot of sense. In the first half of this game, 3 field goals were attempted against Zach Edey, and this came without a make for the Nets, for some reason not including this attempt. In the second half, 12 shots were attempted on Zach Edey, and 6 of these were made. 5 of those were 2s, 4 of those were 10 feet or under from the basket. What did Brooklyn do that turned the prospect of facing 7-4 Zach Edey with limited bigs into a strength as they flipped weakness onto Memphis? When I look at what was occurring in the first half and in some second half glimpses, Zach Edey's dominance was predicated on 3 things: the assertiveness of the Nets player driving, the presence of the Nets big man, and the success rate of the Memphis on-ball defender. A lack of assertiveness from Nets players and strong defensive work on ball by the Grizzlies had Edey well positioned to rim protect and man the paint. In early game examples, and even later on to be honest with the guards, the driver rarely got ahead of Edey and didn't really test him. The driver gets deterred from putting a shot up or driving further. It allows the direct assignment to recover as Edey plays drop coverage, or another defender gets across as the help defender, and the driver subsequently has to offload the ball either out to the perimeter or elsewhere. On this example, the assertiveness of the man driving is fine, but Claxton as a screener isn't remotely involved here, and Edey always has Thomas in front of him. Knowing Claxton isn't going to be a go-to in this scenario, it allows an easy rollover. Here, even though the result is an and one for the Nets, remember the checklist. The assertiveness by the driver is fine. There is a screen being applied pushing Edey out, but the on-ball defending by Jalen Wells allows Edey to recover, play drop coverage, and plant himself further back to cut off the angle. If Wells doesn't foul, Edey is well placed. Got another good example here with the screen arriving by Claxton, but with how high the screen is set, it just allows Pippen to go under without severe punishment. Has Thomas forced into the pass, and when he gets it back and takes Pippen on again, he gets by him, but with Edey blocking him minutes ago, with a 7'10" wingspan and now right beside him, it's a more timid approach by Thomas and he rolls it back out. Again, we do the checklist. Wilson drives with assertiveness, but the on-ball defender does well to hold up the man. The help defender comes across, and this allows Edey to recover and contribute to the trap even more so. The screen isn't utilized well, and Aldama does well to track Wilson so Edey can play that drop coverage, force that pass out. Then Johnson on the drive gets well contained by Ja Morant, to the point he's got to go the long way around, and Edey always keeps Johnson in front, able to get over, recover, and block the drive attempt. Here's a rare case of these 3 key criteria favoring the Nets in the first half. You can see Edey getting pushed out to the perimeter, potentially anticipating a screen action as Claxton executes the handoff. The pin down occurs off the ball for Cam Thomas, and the on-ball defender is now trailing. With Edey out and Morant on Thomas's back shoulder, this is where the assertiveness rises for the driver, and Edey will forever be reaching over the top of Thomas for a block as Thomas protects and draws the foul consequently. So in this case, the Nets' big man's role was effective, the on-ball defender was lost, and the assertiveness by the Nets driver was there, negating Edey's influence. In the twilight of the first half and into the second half, you see more frequency in the three things we've mentioned going the Nets' way. More pace and zing about Nets play, a bit more daring them to test the paint. Imperative on a night where Cam Thomas's jump shot was faltering, not really giving Edey a reason to question his strategy. This change very much correlated with a proactive Nick Claxton, collecting rebounds and running it up the court himself. This had a knock-on effect for the success rate of the on-ball defensive work by the Grizzlies, so imperative to Edey's dominance. And it was opening up so much more opportunity at the rim for the Nets, as they were less under duress without Edey in the frame. Take this example, where the minute Claxton gets a rebound, he releases to Schroeder, who then takes it to Johnson. Jackson's favoring the center of the floor and allowing baseline, so Johnson takes this opportunity. Aldama comes over to close the gap. Even despite the outnumber which favors the Grizzlies, Edey has only had time to get back to the paint and then needs to redirect his run to contest a three ball. It completely goes against the half-court offense the Nets played more prolifically in the first half, which played into the hands of Edey. And the ball moving with pace handed energy to the three-point shooters to make shots such as these. In the second half, another thing the Nets did was change things up with who was receiving handoffs and who was driving to the rim. In most of the examples we've shown, it's been the likes of Schroeder and Thomas, these sort of guards doing the driving and doing so with little success. Those little measures we've been discussing have gone in Memphis's favor in these scenarios. In the second half, we saw a bit of Cam Johnson, Jalen Wilson, mobile yet physical wings go head to head with Edey. Little bit taller, more length, more physicality compared to the guards, and it was negating the influence of Wells and Pippen, these guys who had a strong bearing on Edey's influence in the first half. I know offensively he wasn't great, but Wells sitting on the bench was all the more bewildering for this late game bucket. The way the Rook had been defending on this day, I don't think Schroeder gets past him like he did with LaRavia to get as close to the basket as he did on the clinching possession, which resulted in a score over Edey as he separated using the off arm. If these guards weren't off ball and were manning these wings, well, that's creating a mismatch, isn't it? And equally, it was exploiting the questionable defending of the Grizzlies' wings, specifically in the second half, with Aldama and Jackson's net ratings advisable to look away from. Here's an example with Pippen guarding Cam Johnson. Claxton acknowledges what we've mentioned, given Thomas's struggles, whilst being guarded by Wells. The handoff to Johnson creates a different dynamic. It allows Johnson to fend with the off arm and initiate some physicality as he feeds into the mismatch. He creates space on his right side to get a scoop shot up away from Edey, who isn't even focused on the contest. On this example, having Jalen Wilson match up on Zach Edey as your 5 at both ends creates a unique scenario. It's not usual for a center to pick and pop, send your opposing center out on the perimeter, then drive in with such pace and still bring said physicality the way Wilson does here. Edey remains central after the initial pick is set and then is left reeling with this entire lane for Wilson to run into as he collects. That extra step upon collection gives him that extra yard to get deep, body bump Edey, and protect his right side to score through contact. Great craft by Wilson. Overall, look, Edey's going to be an absolute problem in the NBA with more polish and more experience. But this performance in isolation The fact the Nets were undersized, that actually played into their hands. As the game wore on and more variation seeped into the ways the Nets attacked the basket, Zach Edey's intimidation waned, and mixed in with some timely threes, the Nets got the buckets needed to get the W. Consider this a David and Goliath plotline, NBA edition.